Welcome to Bible for Modern Minds podcast.
Today, we're going straight to the red earth of northern Nigeria, a place where faith isn't just a comfort. It's something that is actively tested.
Tested by fire, yeah, and by violence and just global indifference.
So our mission today for this deep dive, it's very specific.
It is. We're unpacking the harrowing, detailed testimony of one man, Andreas Petro.
A Greek accountant of all people.
Exactly, an accountant who was thrown right into the epicenter of a conflict that, well, the world consistently ignores.
We're going to follow his journey, right? From this comfortable life in Greece.
All the way to a hidden forest pit. And through his story, we'll highlight the unbreakable witness of two Nigerian Christians, Samuel and Mary.
They completely changed how we understood everything.
Everything. So, to set the context for what he saw, we have to look at the scale of this crisis. The numbers are they're overwhelming.
And this is recent data, right? As of 2025.
Yes. In this year alone, over 7,000 Nigerian Christians have been killed. The persecution comes mainly from groups like Boko Haram, and it's, various splinter factions.
So that's 7,000 people.
It's staggering.
If you do the math, that's what? Over 32 people murdered every single day.
Which works out to about one person killed.
Every 45 minutes.
Yeah. And this isn't some historical conflict we're talking about. This is happening right now. And somehow a European accountant ends up right in the middle of it.
Okay, let's unpack that. His transformation. We have to start back in 2010.
Right. Andreas Petro is 31. He's living this life, his notes describe as profoundly safe, predictable, in Volos, Greece.
He's the definition of settled.
Totally. A reliable accountant for a big shipping company, goes to his Orthodox church, dating a woman, Sophia, who's expecting, marriage, the whole thing, security status, routine.
But the sources describe this deep internal ache.
A meaninglessness. Despite having everything, he'd look at the icons in these ancient churches and just ask himself, is this all there is?
And that emptiness was the catalyst for what happened next.
It started with dreams. Intense recurring dreams, starting in October 2010. He describes seeing this vast, dry, red plain.
Quintessential African earth.
Yes. And on it, hundreds of dark-faced children walking toward him, hands outstretched, calling for help.
That's incredibly specific. Did his journals ever, explore if this was just psychological, a reaction to his life being too perfect?
He was honest about the risks, but the conviction was absolute. He looked up NigeRIA, he knew the danger, Boko Haram, kidnappings, all of it.
But the call was stronger.
He writes that the certainty just overwhelmed the rational fear.
And the sacrifice was huge, not just financially.
No, relationally it was brutal. His mother cried every day. His brother accused him of throwing away a privileged life.
And his girlfriend, Sophia.
She demanded to know if he had ever truly loved her. And he wasn't backed by some big agency. He was just an accountant following a dream.
So to fund it, in early 2011, he basically liquidated his life.
He did. Sold a car, his father's fishing boat, emptied his savings. It all came to about 8,000 euro. And he flew to Nigeria.
So once he gets there, his work it's really simple but effective. He's not building hospitals.
No, he's teaching literacy, basic comprehension, anatomy. And crucially, he's teaching Muslim and Christian children together.
In the same classroom.
Yeah.
Which is a huge statement.
A massive one. This is where we meet people who grounded his mission. He writes about a student, Grace, a 9-year-old Christian girl. Her father had been killed the year before. She was always the first to arrive, the last to leave, just seeking stability.
But the core of the experience for him was the theology he ran into.
Yes, this persistent, unshakable joy. He couldn't understand it. He asked a local leader, Pastor Chukuma, how they could maintain this radical faith while literally facing death every day.
And the pastor's reply is really central to Andreas's whole testimony.
It is, he told him. Prosperity makes people forget they need God, but suffering reminds them. He said the Western church, Andreas's church, is dying of comfort, while the African church is being purified by fire.
Wow, that line it's brutal, a huge indictment. Did Andreas's later analysis connect his old life in Greece to that idea of dying of comfort?
Oh, absolutely. He realized he'd been worshiping safety, not God. And that realization gave him a purpose he'd never known.
But purpose doesn't stop bullets. How quickly did the violence ramp up?
It became intense. Late 2011 into 2012, Church bombings were increasing, and new terror groups were emerging. He specifically mentions Ansaro, a Boko Haram splinter group.
And their whole thing was kidnapping foreigners, right, for ransom.
Exactly. Foreign targets for ransom and geopolitical leverage.
And Andreas, despite this, decides to double down. He goes to the hardest places, like Niger State, where Ansaro operated. Why?
Because retreating meant abandoning the very people he felt called to. He tells this powerful story from August 2012 about a church in Niger State that was completely burned down.
In the community.
The community Christians and even non-extremist Muslims came together and rebuilt the whole mud brick church in just 3 weeks.
Wow, 3 weeks.
And when they held that first service, he said the sound of them singing, with tears running down their faces. It was just this pure act of resilience. It defeats the whole purpose of terror.
But that kind of visibility, it comes at a cost.
It did. Soon after, he found a crude note nailed to his door.
Leave or die.
Leave or die. You corrupt our youth. He had to make the ultimate decision. He admits in his journals he thought about leaving, but he couldn't abandon Mary, a teacher, and Samuel, the pastor. He started to believe that following Jesus always meant martyrdom was on the table.
And his life of safety was officially over.
Completely. The last normal day was March 17, 2013. He shared bread and water with Pastor Samuel, and that evening they gathered for a small Bible study.
They were studying John chapter 10, the Good Shepherd.
The passage about the shepherd laying down his life for the sheep. The symbolism is just, it's haunting.
And then everything changed.
A sudden silence. Then the roar of trucks, heavy boots. The church door just explodes inward, masked men with AK-47s everywhere.
And they separated them.
Quickly. The hostages were Andreas, Samuel the pastor, and Mary the teacher. They were dragged deep into the forest.
And thrown into what he called the pit.
His description is visceral. A dark, damp, 8-foot-wide hole, 6 feet deep, designed for maximum suffering and isolation.
The torture started right away.
Immediately. Physical beatings, rifle butts, sleep deprivation, twisted psychological games with hope and time.
But the worst part was the demand for conversion.
They were ordered to recite the Shahada, the Islamic Declaration of Faith.
And their responses were very different.
A painful contrast. Andreas and Mary complied, sort of, under duress, whispering it. Andreas noted Mary would immediately whisper Jesus right after, like a tiny act of defiance.
So let's pause on that. Why does Samuel the pastor feel compelled to just refuse outright, knowing it meant death?
Andreas thinks Samuel had already made peace with his death long before they arrived. When they demanded he recite it, his only response was this calm, steady, Jesus is Lord.
And they beat him unconscious for it.
Twice. He'd already counted the cost. He wasn't going to compromise.
Then on the 4th or 5th day, they made it personal for Andreas.
The commandant showed him a video on a laptop. 7 executed foreign hostages. One of them was Greek.
The ultimatum.
Clear as day. His fate would be the same if an $80,000 ransom wasn't paid in 10 days. In that moment, Andreas said his Greek faith just felt like sand slipping through his fingers.
As this is all happening, Mary's health is failing.
Rapidly. High fever, infected wounds. On about the 9th day, after a really brutal interrogation, she made a choice.
She chose to accept death.
And refused to deny her faith. She stood up, despite the pain, looked at the guard, and she just began to sing. Loud and clear. Yesu shain hanya gaskia darai.
Which means
Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. They struck her down, but she just kept singing.
Andreas says this was the turning point for him. He was witnessing something ancient. He calls her a confessor, like from the early church. Someone who found total freedom in faithfulness.
And Samuel, with broken ribs, is still providing this incredible theological depth, praying for their captors.
Saying hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, and seeing martyrdom as a vocation. He prepared for his death, confessing sins, talking about his family.
Then in all that darkness, there's this one small act of mercy.
An impossible moment. A young guard named Abdul, who'd been radicalized himself, secretly gave them a piece of clean cloth for Mary's infected wounds.
And Samuel saw this as
the kingdom of God breaking through. They immediately prayed for Abdul, forgiving the very enemy holding them captive.
As the deadline gets closer, Samuel knows time is running out.
He performs one last act of mentorship. He gives Andreas the small wooden cross from around his neck.
And his last words to him about it were profound.
Some of us carry our cross for years, he said, and some of us are nailed to it. But remember, Andreas, both were acts of worship.
And Mary made him promise something else.
A promise to tell the world what was happening. She said her death had to mean something.
Then on the 10th or 11th day, the commandant calls for Andreas.
And delivers the agonizing decision.
Yeah.
Andreas would be released. And it was not an act of mercy.
No, this gets to the core of this whole deep dive, the arithmetic of survival.
The commandant's reasoning was just cold, brutal logic. The recent killing of those 7 foreigners had brought unwanted international attention. Another European hostage was a problem.
And he said it to him directly.
He did. He said, Western lives matter to Western powers, but African lives matter to no one. Samuel and Mary, being Nigerian, would stay. Their execution would cause no international incident. Their lives were just valued less.
That's horrifying. Andreas had to explain that to them, that his freedom was based on his passport.
Can you imagine? As he was driven away, blindfolded, the last sound he ever heard was Mary's voice, singing again. Yesu shine, Hanya Gaskedarai.
He was rescued, but eventually learned the truth.
That Mary Okafor and Samuel Adme were executed shortly after he was released in April 2013. The sources just show this raw, crushing survivor's guilt. He knew his freedom was, quote, purchased with their blood.
He couldn't shake that cruel arithmetic.
But he forged that trauma into purpose. He founded the Mary and Samuel Memorial Fund to support orphans and persecuted believers. He kept the promise he made to Mary in that pit.
So if we bring this back to today, 2025, the situation is still dire.
Those statistics haven't gotten better. 32 Christians killed a day, 100 churches destroyed a month. This story from 2013 is still the playbook for what's happening now.
And Andreas works to personalize those numbers.
Tirelessly. He talks about the June 2025 Iwata village massacre, over 200 killed. He spoke to a survivor, Blessing, who hid for 2 days while her family was slaughtered.
And the Easter attacks.
Coordinated attacks, 170 murdered during Holy Week services. Pastor Emmanuel was killed at his pulpit. These are targeted acts of religious cleansing.
And the Memorial Fund now supports how many children?
47 orphans. He tells the story of an 8-year-old boy, Joseph, who drew a picture of his father preaching. The caption just said, Papa is with Jesus. The faith of the next generation is just astounding.
Which brings us back to the big question. Why does the world stay silent? Andreas has 3 core theories.
The first is the painful one, structural racism. Simply put, he concludes, African lives are valued less on the global stage. There's no political urgency when the victors are Nigerian.
It's the commandant's arithmetic on a global scale, but he also points to politics and economics.
He does. Nigeria is a huge oil producer. Western powers have strategic relationships they don't want to jeopardize. Pressuring them on human rights is seen as risky for business. Silence is easier.
And finally, he looks at the Western church, the one he came from.
And he returns to Pastor Chukwuma's words, dying of comfort. He argues that our affluence breeds indifference. It's just easier to be comfortable and ignore a reality that demands sacrifice.
When he says that, he's talking directly to us, isn't he? So how does he say we bridge that gap?
His call to action is very practical. First, break the silence. Use your voice. Pressure governments. Challenge the media narrative that calls this farmer-herder clashes.
Call it what it is, targeted persecution.
Exactly. Second, support organizations like his, the Mary and Samuel Memorial Fund. Turn trauma into real aid. And finally, prayer. Not as an excuse to do nothing, but as the fuel for engagement.
Andreas's journey really just highlights that stark contrast between a comfortable faith and one purified by fire.
And yet, even in that despair, there was that tiny crack of redemption. The guard, Abdul, who later saw Christ after that one moment of mercy. It shows that life can break through the violence.
Samuel and Mary were nailed to their cross of suffering, and in their final moments, they passed a cross of memory, of responsibility to Andreas, and he has now passed that witness on to you.
The silence has been broken for you. You're no longer ignorant of the arithmetic of suffering.
So if Samuel and Mary endured the ultimate cost so that their story would be heard, what will you do with the cross of memory they entrusted to the world?